This podcast may contain explicit language. Ride like the wind, Bullseye! Toy Story 2, next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
Well, I'm apparently Patton Oswalt, but never mind. I'm Dana Duncan.
We did get another one of those comments this week on one of the platforms. I can't remember. I remember texting it to Andrew, but
you said
I hadn't shown
too.
you. Oh, he should send it to you? Okay.
Well, somebody did. I got it and I saw it and I'm like, oh God, again?
Yeah, again. But we are here tonight with another mission, and that is to continue our summer of toys. So, without further ado, we also welcome our returning celebrity guest, founder of Boss Locks Media and host of the Working While Black Show, making his 5th appearance on the show to date, and officially the newest entrant to the Five Timers Club, who will be receiving his hat after this episode. It's Walter Gay!
Yeah. This is awesome. I love, as soon as the show started, just instantly joy came up. I really enjoy being on the show with y'all.
We're glad to hear it, and we always love having you on, sir. It is a long-term friendship between you and I, and you've now been on the show enough to earn your hat and special privileges. You have now officially crossed that barrier. I will get your address after the show. We'll make sure you get your hat so the next time that you're on in a few weeks, you can wear it off with pride.
P. Sherman, 82, Sydney, something. I forgot the quote. But yeah, I love it. It's like I'm a rewards member.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, you've earned it. How many people are in our Five Timers Club? Just give me a second here. I know I have it able to be pulled up, but I just wanted to see how many.
Yeah, it'd be good to stop and see how.
All right,
because I feel like I'll have a whole.
My mother is in. She's past the 15 barrier at this point. We have Kieran B, who's at 14. We have Rob Conlon at 11. We have my sister Sarah at 8. We have Peterson W. Hill, I believe, also at 8. Shane Rogers is at 7. Allison, my other sister, is at 6. Andrew Corns has been on 6. Sarah Shea has gotten to 5. So that leaves, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You will be the 10th Five-Time Club member.
Keith doesn't qualify yet?
No, he's only been on 4. Red River, Saving Private Ryan, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Ghostbusters.
Almost there, Keith.
So we will have one other Five-Time Club member entrant by the end of the year. And that will be Jessie Sertle when he comes back for Almost Famous. But that is not coming up for a few months. But regardless, welcome back, Walt. What have you been doing with yourself since you were last here for a Pixar film?
Oh, man. I've not watched that many movies. I feel like I need to step my movie game up. I've been doing a lot of content, capturing people as they're going out to see what it's like, capture the nightlife in Atlanta, helping people find different places to doing with the startup. Lots of podcast stuff, and I got engaged as well, actually. I don't know if y'all know.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
Yeah. It's been a busy, eventful, exciting, adventurous few months, year, etc.
To be fair, movies are usually for lonely people with not a lot to do, so the lack of watching movies is probably indicative of you being a better social.
You would think so, but me and my fiance, I think some of our first moments were going watching TV shows and movies together, so we actually need to get back to that. It's like our love language almost.
Well, there is that. Certainly a passion shared is one that a relationship can be built on. So let's move into tonight's movie then. For tonight, we have our 264th episode as we return to Toyland with Toy Story 2 from 1999, directed by John Lasseter, written by Andrew Stanton, Rita Zhao, Doug Chamberlain, Chris Webb, cinematography by Sharon Callahan, music by Randy Newman, starring Tom Hanks as Woody, Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear, Joan Cusack as Jessie, Kelsey Grammer as Stinky Pete the Prospector, Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head, Wallace Shawn as Rex, John Ratzenberger as Ham, Annie Potts as Bo Peep, Estelle Harris as Mrs. Potato Head, John Morris as Andy Davis, Wayne Knight as Al McWhiggin, Laurie Metcalf as Andy's mother, Arlie Ermy as Sarge, Joe Ranft, I don't know how to say that, Ranft as Wheezy, Jodie Benson as Tour Guide Barbie, Jonathan Harris as the Cleaner, Jeff Pigeon as the Aliens, and Andrew Stanton as Evil Emperor Zurg. So, obviously, this year has been a world full of sequels. We've now discussed on multiple occasions that movies that have had sequels or that we've talked about, especially recently. I know that Rob came on and we talked about Gladiator and Gladiator 2. We were obviously just coming off of the trilogy or the original trilogy of Star Wars that we covered this last month. We just did an episode on Back to the Future again, which obviously has 2 sequels to it. In a world full of sequels, as last year proved, I think 9 of the top 10 movies all had a number next to the name of the film. Why is Toy Story 2 a good example of an expanding of the story?
Well, I guess what I would say on that front is we have new characters, an expanded arc, more roles and such for each of the characters that show more development and relationships between the characters. And so as a result, you come up with a completely new and fresh story that advances Toy Story 1 significantly and does not feel like just a carbon copy of the original.
When we did Toy Story a few months back, I think at this point, a lot of it was having to do with the relationship of the toys to their one owner. And it was a very confined movie within the small universe of Andy's room, more or less, and how Andy fit his toys into his life. This goes outside those bounds and now has the toys interacting with different people and the lifespan of what a toy is. It's really going to the theory of, is a toy a collectible? Is it something to be played with? Is it something to enjoy? What is the purpose of a toy? And I think more than the original, where it focuses more on friendship, on kind of almost like a workplace dynamic, this one expands more on the actual toy aspect. And that's why I know we haven't gotten to Toy Story 3 yet. We have that coming up later this summer. I felt they really had a good 3-story arc. You limit it to Andy's room, then you expand beyond Andy's room, and then you finish with the progression of Andy growing up. Each one has the life cycle of what a toy is and what its purpose is in life. And that's why I thought 4 just never really expanded on the story. Where was there to go on the life cycle of a toy?
I don't want to necessarily go beyond 2 on this particular one because we could talk about all of them together, but I mean, my focus is on this because really this is not just the story. This is, again, bonding of the toys. It is also what the purpose of a toy is, as you indicated, either collectible or to be played with. And it's ultimately about greed and magnanimity, being generous with your time and your efforts and trying to help others. The toys are trying to help each one. Originally, Woody gets into the trouble because he's trying to save Squeezy.
Well, that's true. And he's also potentially making a decision based on the needs of Jessie and Bullseye and potentially Stinky Pete, that they need value too in their life, and they're only going to have value once he decides to give up the thing he loves. So he's somewhat of the sacrificial piece in this whole endeavor. But I could also say I saw a lot of parallels between not only the life cycle of the toy, but especially in the 3-minute kind of bridge song piece in the middle of the movie where Jessie's reminiscing on her time with Emily, I could see a lot of parallels between parenting, even though I'm not one myself, that you watch your child grow up and you cannot contain that. They're going to continue to outgrow you, but you want to hang on for as long as the ride is there.
Yes, every parent, I think, has a different feel or desire or need, or however you want to put it. I mean, for me, I tried to stay as involved as I could. I understood that there had to be some boundaries and independence and such. And at some point in time, it was easy for me to say, hey, I've done everything I can. I've given you a stable environment, an education, whether it be a formal education or an education that I provided as far as my values, my ideas, my work ethic, etc. And then it's, you accept it and you try to then develop a more adult relationship. Some parents have a very difficult time with that concept, and they're trying to continually hold on to their children, and that's why children talk about how they feel like they regress every time they have to come home. I try to avoid that as much as I can. I can't say that that's a common theme with my betrothed.
Well, let's put it this way. There is a natural regression that happens because you're in a familiar space, an environment, and with the social dynamics that are learned and ingrained within a family. I feel that people are much different away from their family structure than they are when they're back at home, because there's just certain dynamics that you play into, the family politics that gets kind of in the way. But not to go too far off the subject, we've kind of narrowed down. Well, I don't know how recently you would watch this until this current rewatch of the film. Did you see a lot of these parallels or these themes in here too?
Actually, I don't know the last time I've seen this movie, but I just so interesting in hearing the two of y'all talk and just knowing Pixar is known for their storytelling capabilities. And I think I was sharing on the last one where we talked about The Incredibles, where I was talking about listening to the co-founder or the founder's audiobook and like talking about what goes into all of their storytelling, how they're really pulling from a lot of real life experiences. And so it's a kid's movie with, little like subtle hints towards like, jokes that are for adults or just kind of symbolism that only adults will catch on to, but it really is like stories that start from like real life experiences. So I think I would go ahead and be like, yeah, definitely I could see a lot of parenting symbolism there. I'm also thinking about Woody's just role as a sheriff and being the sheriff's supposed to be the authoritarian figure and everything, and Woody's definitely embodying that. And I think in each movie you kind of see a different side of like him, especially as he's growing himself. There's a lot of familial messes there. Some of the jokes between like the potato head couples, obviously that's like blatant there, but I think there's a lot of symbolism in that with a lot of things. I guess you could even look at Jessie as someone who has abandonment issues, and that could tie into, parenting and family kind of breaking apart there as well. So yeah, I definitely see it.
It's not until you mentioned the sheriff aspect of Woody that I kind of put two and two together. Not only is he kind of an authoritarian figure and more or less a guardian, but a caretaker of the entire group due to his position that's natural from being the sheriff. But likewise, Buzz is competing with him and then becomes kind of a partner in that. He is a space ranger who's basically a space cop. So they both have similar roles. You talk about Bo Peep being kind of the love interest, but shepherding a flock. You talk about Jessie also being a cowgirl who is a potential shepherd of cows or whatever else to that extent. A lot of people are maybe on the nose with their roles, and I guess I hadn't thought of it, but it makes a lot of sense with how their characters are set up.
Woody is Andy Griffith. It's
Okay.
Mayberry.
Wow.
He takes care of everybody. He's there as the leader, and he kind of makes sure everything happens and stays in its proper place. and everybody's taken care of, and that's his role.
So is Rex then Barney Fife, the attack dog?
Boy, that I'm not sure about.
Or I think maybe well, I was going to say maybe Slinky, but I'm not sure.
Well, Andy quite literally might be Ron Howard's or Opie.
Yeah. And maybe Rex is.
I think Ham is too smart, and so is Mr. Potato Head. He's too acerbic to be Barney Fife.
Yeah, and yes, I know. And if I had to say Mr. Potato Head would be anybody, I would possibly say
Gomer Pyle?
Before his stroke would have been Howard the Barber, because
we've now lost everybody in the audience.
Floyd the Barber.
That's about it.
Howard McNeil.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode recapping Me TV episodes.
Yes. Floyd the Barber, Howard McNeil, had a stroke, and Andy wouldn't let him be replaced. But anyway.
Move off of Floyd the Barber?
Okay. You're the one who is drawing the other parallels.
Yeah, this could be a trivia question that someone's going to win the beer or something, and they're going to know the answer because of this podcast. So, Danny, you got someone a free beer or whatever they do.
People who are listening to a podcast on Toy Story 2 are not people who are also probably consumers of Andy Griffith.
It's still a good show.
Okay. Moving on, let's dig a little further into the film. Toy Story 2 was released on November 24th, 1999. It was as successful as the first Toy Story film commercially. It became 1999's highest-grossing animated film and the number 3 film overall. Dad, we've covered one of the 2 films to finish above it, and I doubt we will cover the other. Can you name either of the 2 finishing films ahead of it that year?
I knew this, and I'm drawing a blank. No, I can't.
So number 1 was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Okay.
And number 2 was The Sixth Sense.
Yes. Which one will we not be covering?
Well, we covered The Sixth Sense, so I leave that to your imagination to figure out the math from there.
So we're not going to do the other Star Wars films?
I didn't say we weren't going to do any of them, but we're probably not covering Phantom Menace.
I had that one on VHS. Darth Maul was my favorite Sith villain, but I'm not mad at that decision.
The dual lightsaber has always been cool. And that final fight, while a little cheesy, but with the music, I mean, John Williams' score for the Duel of the Fates is still epic and entertaining. But the rest of the movie is, your mileage may vary. Anyway, Toy Story 2 earned $245.9 million in the United States and Canada and $511.3 million worldwide, beating both Pixar's previous releases by a significant margin. It became the third highest grossing animated film of all time, behind which 2 other Disney films?
Lion King and Aladdin.
Very good. Critics were overwhelmingly effusive in their praise, with many claiming it to be at least equal to the original or surpassing it in quality. Toy Story 2 would garner 1 Oscar nomination for what?
Special effects?
Original song for When She
Yep.
Loved Me by Randy Newman. The film has since been recognized by the AFI on the following lists. 2003, AFI's 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains. Buzz Lightyear was a nominated hero. Oddly enough, that Woody was not even considered. 2004, AFI's 100 Years, 100 Songs, When She Loved Me was a nominated song. 2008, AFI's 10 Top 10. This was a nominated film in the animated category. Currently, it holds a 100% rating among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, an 88 score on Metacritic, and a 3.9 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Now, Dad, what is your relationship to this film?
Well, I am positive that I took at least 2 little children, if not 3, to see this.
I think it was 3 because I remember going to this. It was released right around Thanksgiving, and I want to say we went to the theater to see this with my cousins. And you and Steve, Uncle Steve, took us and Sheridan, because I don't think Shaylin was born yet, to see this because my cousins and my aunt and uncle are big Disney people. So this was natural in that progression.
Was this cookie baking weekend?
I believe it would have been.
So I couldn't remember if Sarah was along. She would have been 3.
I think Sarah would have probably gone because cousin Sheridan would have gone. But I do remember seeing this with Allison because this instantly, because of Jessie, became Allison's favorite of the Toy Story movies.
Okay.
It still is.
Yeah.
If you ask her which one do you think is the best Toy Story movie, this is number one, far and away, the one she will pick. And I think she said as much on the Toy Story episode she was on a couple of months ago. Walt, what is your recollection of the first time you watched this?
I think I'll actually always remember it because this was the first time I saw a movie in theaters without my parents. My mom's very big on it takes a village, right? So the community always getting involved. And there was this couple, this one guy, I remember he played the drums. He taught me how to play the drums a little bit, or at least just let me hit the drums a bunch. But he and his partner took me to see the movie in theaters. My mom had to write this note essentially to put in, I guess maybe my wallet, basically saying like, this child is not kidnapped, but because it was a white couple. So I don't know how that note would have made a difference, but I remember getting that note and being told hey, they might think you're with someone else. I don't know. So I was like, okay. But yeah, I was 6 because my birthday's in November. So this came out just a few days after my birthday. I don't know if we went in November or December, but I'll never forget going. I think we sat close to the front, but it's still good seats. So, yeah.
Yeah, the 90s was a much simpler time before all the lawyers and the internet got involved with everything.
Yeah. Just pick up a kid and take him to the theater.
Yes. Horrible torture. You're taking him to see Toy Story 2.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Dad. Do you have a plot summary ready for us?
Oh, I do. In Toy Story 2, Woody, Tom Hanks, is stolen by a greedy toy collector, Al McWhiggin, Wayne Knight, who plans to sell him to a museum in Japan. While Woody meets new toys, Jessie, the cowgirl, Joan Cusack, Bullseye, the horse, and Stinky Pete the Prospector, Kelsey Grammer, Buzz Lightyear, Tim Allen, and the rest of Andy's toys embark on a daring rescue mission to bring Woody home. However, Woody is tempted by the idea of being preserved forever in the museum, leading to an emotional struggle between loyalty and destiny.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the Did You Know? Upon seeing the film, animator Chuck Jones, director of the Looney Tunes shorts, wrote a letter to John Lasseter calling the film, quote, wonderful and, quote, beautifully animated, and telling Lasseter he was, quote, advancing the cause of classic animation in a new and effective way. Lasseter, a personal admirer of Jones, has the letter framed in his house. As you should.
Yes.
That's like, I'm trying to think. That's like getting praise from Babe Ruth or Willie Mays.
Yeah, well, it's like Willie Mays writing you a letter saying you're a great baseball player.
Like if Michael Jordan tapped you as the next Michael Jordan. That's probably the equivalent.
Yeah.
All right, did you know? For the scene where Woody looks at the merchandise from Woody's Roundup, mock-ups of the toys were shown to Tom Hanks in the recording booth. Hanks' spontaneous reactions to the toys were recorded and used for Woody's dialogue. There has to be nobody better at showing sheer surprise and great, enthusiastic reactions than Tom Hanks. Because even if you showed me the mock-ups of these things, I don't know if I could get jazzed about seeing Woody's Roundup. I'm on a yo-yo! So? Ooh, I have a lunchbox.
Wish I had a lunchbox.
You could be on a lunchbox. We could make one. It's called Etsy.
Boom.
There, that'll be our prize we give out for the 20th. We'll give out old metal lunchboxes with Dana's face on them.
That'll be funny. You can actually put popcorn in it, take it with you to the movies.
Dana, man of the people, lunch pail. There you go. There you go. All right. Did you know? When Ham is flipping through the channels looking for Al's Toy Barn commercial, all the other stations show clips from shorts and commercials Pixar produced through the years, including Luxo Jr. from 1986, Red's Dream from 1987, Tin Toy from 1988, and Knick Knack from 1989. There is also a logo for the Next computer, developed by Pixar's then CEO, Steve Jobs, as well as a few clips of some of Pixar's television commercials they did, and a brief image of Pixar's old logo. So I think you'll have to watch that on slow-mo next time to see some of the clips and different things that are in there, but that's some good Easter eggs. Did you know? There was some discussion with regard to the song When She Loved Me and its place in the film. Randy Newman expressed concern over whether or not young children would be able to sit through the 3-minute ballad, while both Tim Allen and Tom Hanks admitted to being moved to tears by the scene featuring the song. I have to admit, I am with both of them on that one. I didn't sob, but definitely there were some tears developing. It's a highly emotional scene. I would put it up there with, it's like 30% of that 10-minute scene to open up that everybody talks about.
Oh.
Like a silent scene that's just set to music and it's so moving. That's the thing I thought of. And I'm like, why doesn't Pixar do this more often?
I feel like they've got some other ones that kind of beat this Toy Story 2 ones. I don't think I was as moved with the other ones. Like the Up, that's still what I think about. That still hits me. And there's another one, I think maybe, I forgot which one, but I'd probably put that lower.
I will definitely sob more at the end of Toy Story 3 than I do at that moment. But I haven't seen this movie probably in 20 years. And for whatever reason, it just caught me right.
Well, a song you play too often becomes old. And so I think it has much more emotional impact by not going to it more often.
That's probably fair. Did you know, when working on the film, someone entered a code called RM**, which, when entered, deletes everything on the computer as quickly as possible. Because of this, the creators of the movie lost 90% of the film. The animators tried to get the backup animation, but it wasn't working. Fortunately, supervising technical director Galen Sussman had recently had a child, so she took a copy of the movie home with her so she could work from home. They covered the extra copy in blankets and drove it back to the studio and were able to recover most of the film.
Wow.
Yeah. An era without the cloud.
Yeah. Been there.
Yep. You delete your whole brief by accident?
Yeah, 4 hours of work on my novel. Daddy, play with me.
I
won't mention which child that was.
Jinx. Okay. Finally, when Jessie first meets Woody, Tom Hanks, she exclaims, "Sweet mother of Abraham Lincoln." Abraham Lincoln's mother was Nancy Hanks, a blood relative of Tom Hanks. He is a direct descendant of an uncle of Nancy Hanks.
Yes, it's like Nancy Hanks's brother is Tom Hanks's great-great-grandfather.
There are worse people to be related to.
Well, step, because Nancy Hanks was his stepmother.
Fair enough. So with that, we will take our first break and we'll be right back.
We're all getting fed up of endlessly scrolling for our next movie fix. So to get passionate about films again, join 3 movie mates on the Never Ending Watchlist movie podcast, where we take you on a movie journey as we seek to build the ultimate movie watchlist.
Seen all of those films are absolute bangers.
Yeah,
absolute bangers.
Bangers.
I applaud you again, sir.
We deep dive specific movies to find out facts, theories, and funny takes, and ultimately decide whether a movie is worthy of being on the watchlist.
I can't recommend this film.
Oh!
We'll debate top 5s, rank directors' movies, and interview film fans just like you.
And she is an incredibly complex villain. She's fierce, she's immovable.
So whether you're a casual movie fan or hardened cinephile, we've got plenty for you to enjoy.
I got outvoted by the guy who chose the movie for this episode.
Join me, Damon Carter, Alex Hall, and Cam Young on the Never Ending Watchlist movie podcast every week on Podcast Everywhere.
It's easier to find Cameron on Facebook than it is to find a plot in existence. Right, anyway, for now, it's farewell to Alex.
Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 265th episode, we welcome back occasional writer, contributor, and film commentator Scott Cole to discuss our second Robert Altman film of season 6 with Nashville from 1975, a film that my dad is personally looking forward to a lot. Directed by Robert Altman, written by Joan Tewksbury, cinematography by Paul Lohman, music by Richard Baskin, starring Keith Carradine, Ned Beatty, Shelley Duvall, Lily Tomlin, and Scott Glenn. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. All right, before we get any further, Walt, what are you working on and where can people find you?
Find me wherever you are tuning into this show. Apple, YouTube, Spotify, CastBox. I was about to say Stitcher, but they are no longer. All the places, the Working While Black show. That's something I'm really excited about building. It's like my 10-year project just to continue to build upon it and create a lot of support systems and resources for kind of creating that spark for growth in career and entrepreneurship.
Excellent. And any other social places that people can find or track your work?
Yes. I am on LinkedIn. I am very invested in YouTube right now. They have, I think it's leapt on a lot. They have a whole community/post tab where you can basically just share images, polls, same thing you do on other platforms. So I'm heavily invested in that. But of course, always will be on Instagram too. It's the Great Walt. TikTok, experimenting with, I think, some point this year. But yeah, LinkedIn for sure. I'm probably there the most.
Excellent. And as always, all of our guest links and their attributions will be both on our website as well as in the show notes if you want to look for any of them there. All right, let's get back into the movie itself. We left off at Best Performance. Dad, who do you have down?
I have Tom Hanks. Every time, every one of these, he's just spot on. He just dominates the films.
That's why I know he's coming back for Toy Story 5, but the fact that he was kind of given a soft ending at the end of Toy Story 4 was the thing that doesn't make the most sense to me. Because there is nothing more iconic or synonymous with Toy Story than Tim Allen doing Buzz Lightyear and Tom Hanks doing Woody. That's just what Toy Story is. If you don't have those two, I'm not sure you have anything else.
Yeah. And the funny part of that is that Tim Allen was not the first choice.
Yes, we went over that when we were doing our original episode of Toy Story.
Yes.
Back a couple of months ago. So you can find that if you want to hear who else was suggested for the role of Buzz Lightyear at the time.
Did y'all see the newer Buzz Lightyear movie?
I have not, no.
No.
I know they had a different actor for that one. And actually, I'm like, he actually didn't do a bad job, actually. So it is a difference. You could kind of hear a difference, but he kind of brought a different life to it, I guess.
Yeah, it was Chris Evans, who was famous for doing Captain America and was also Johnny Storm in the original Fantastic Four films from the mid-2000s. For me, I have the writers. I think that the number one thing I think about as far as if you're measuring quality of this movie, and Walt kind of mentioned it before, one of the things that Pixar's gotten a lot of credit for beyond their expansion and kind of domination of animated property, especially in the digital computer space, that kind of reformatted what animation was from about the mid-90s on and has become the dominant form of animation, so much so that at this point it's kind of unique or novel when anybody goes back to other formats, save for Studio Ghibli that just kind of does its own thing. But the other thing they have always been known for is their storytelling, up until recently, where I think most of the diehard Pixar fans feel it's kind of fallen off a little bit. They've gotten a little bit more sequelitis. The storytelling quality and some of the original inspiration they had from some of that team that was originally there in the 90s just hasn't seemed to have that same level of spark. I thought Inside Out 2 was very good, and we're going to be discussing Inside Out in a couple of weeks. But other than that, I think over the last couple of years, I'm not as nearly impressed on a per film basis as when they were cranking out some of these early ones. Even A Bug's Life, I would say, is better than anything they put out since about the year 2000.
I remember we had this discussion on the last one too, actually. I will say, watching Toy Story 2, though, it's hard to compare some of these films to what they're doing now. Like I loved Inside Out too. And I think they've done a good job, but just rewatching this one, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is different. That the animation as well, just seeing like the texture, like the difference in textures on different things, like that guy, the toy maker's box and Woody's, I guess, skin or cloth or anything. Bullseye, his fabric as well. Like it's just so much detail and it all plays into it. So it really is kind of incomparable. I'm not mad at that take anymore.
I think that beyond that, if you were to give real credit to the writing, I didn't put this in the Did You Know section, but apparently at the time, the scene with Wheezy with all the dust was a record for the most amount of pixels, I think, on screen at any one time in animation because of the complexity of just doing that much little like particles of dust and such. I want to say, and I know I'm not going to credit the animators particularly for this one, but as much as I complained on the original episode for Toy Story itself, that some of the animation looks dated, I don't think that the animation for this one looks very dated at all. In fact, I didn't really have too many issues at all. To me, there's like almost a night and day difference between the original Toy Story and even A Bug's Life and this movie. Like they made some very far leaps forward, if you ask me, within 4 years.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, Walt, who is your best performer?
I have Tom Hanks as well. I think like the biggest thing I think for me is just like the character arc, and like each movie, you know, he just continues to grow in certain ways. But this one is like a lot different from the first one, where he's very like almost like a scarcity. Is like I could only be the one. In this one, he was like, you know what, I think they'll be all right without me, and he's just willing to kind of sacrifice, like you mentioned before. So definitely Tom Hanks, Woody.
You know, I find it a little bit funny, and I'll share an anecdote that I caught in a book that I was reading over the weekend. I finished Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, and in there he shared an anecdote from Brian Grazer, who has been a major Hollywood film producer. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I read like 3 different Malcolm Gladwell books over the last week, so I was reading Blink. That was the book that I want to attribute, even though I did read Revenge of the Tipping Point, but it was from Blink. And his point in mentioning this is that Brian Grazer knew within the first 30 seconds of meeting Tom Hanks, that's who needed to be cast in Splash. Because even though there were funnier people that could make people laugh and were better comedians, when you see Tom Hanks, you want Tom Hanks to do well because Tom Hanks is instantly likable. He just has this aura about him at all times that makes him accessible and makes people root for him. And that's why his films, I think, collectively have grossed over $8 billion.
You know what? That reminds me of the very beginning of the pandemic. I remember when people were like, wait, is this a real thing? And then Tom Hanks got COVID and we're like, oh, not Tom Hanks. So, yeah, that's
America's dad.
Yep.
All right, best secondary performers. I have Tim Allen. I think that the character arc for this one, for Buzz, is a lot more defined, yet stretches his bounds in a lot newer fashion. Not only is he playing his own character that gets kind of its own arc, as opposed to the first one where he's kind of like rigid and he has a bit of an arc to grow. It's not until the end of the film that he kind of develops it. And to a degree, you're still living out the first film mostly through Woody's eyes. You get a little bit of Buzz. This one, he gets his own time to shine as like a co-lead throughout most of the film. And then he's pulling, for at least a good portion of the film, I would say up to a third, double duty as doing both different Buzz Lightyear characters, which has a different tone, a different kind of demeanor. And so I just thought, deservedly, as much focus as we have on Woody, he gets his time to shine. I'll recognize him here. Other best secondary performances?
Actually, my secondary performance was Buzz. Actually, you know what? He did such a good job that I didn't even think of the fact that he was also voicing the other toy versions of Buzz as well. Yeah, I'm still sticking with Tom as like the best performer, but yeah, he definitely should be applauded for that.
I'm going to go against the grain. I have Kelsey Grammer.
Of course you do.
It's Sideshow Bob with a broader role, being the villain. It's the same, that baritone voice of his, can sound very soothing and then turn on a dime and be just villainous.
Forgive me for not really knowing, because I didn't really grow up with The Simpsons, even though they were like around, but it was still something that was not necessarily intended for me, who was born a year after they kind of started. And so even though they've been around for most of my lifetime, it's just not something I really got into. But was Sideshow Bob ever kind of a vulnerable, accessible villain?
Yes, at times he was.
Okay, because then that fits exactly what Stinky Pete is here. Because he has a very soft-spoken role through 75% of the film. And then he kind of makes that heel turn and he becomes kind of the demanding, more irate, almost Frasier-like, funny, irate, ranting character by the end of the movie.
Yes.
So I do think it is actually really good casting, although it's really hard for me to separate out the voice of Kelsey Grammer from Stinky Pete at this point. It's just so distinctive. But I'm sure when I was 9 years old and seeing this for the first time and hadn't really seen Frasier, I could definitely be masked or told that this is just Stinky Pete.
Yes.
All right, most charismatic. I have Joan Cusack here. I think that, like my sister, a lot of people came to this movie and needed new characters to not only expand the universe, but to just simply root for. I mean, even as much as we love Woody and we love Buzz, we want to be a part of their universe, but we also want other people to love and appreciate. And if those characters didn't appeal to you in that way, you needed other representation out there. And I'm sorry, Ham and Slinky and Rex are not toys that are representative of little girls or little girls' toys. So having Jessie thrown in there, I do think was a definite play at the younger female audience, and it definitely worked. And I think that she's got a really good verve in the entire film. She's very expressive. She creates a very distinct character through her voice work. As much as I think, like, I know Joan Cusack's voice, there is somewhere where you kind of lose it and just see Jessie at a certain point, unlike how distinctive I feel Kelsey Grammer's is, and I can't quite as much separate the visual on screen from his actual voice work.
I have Jessie as well, actually. I just think, like, for all those reasons, she brought a whole new energy to it, but she's just, like, I feel like several times throughout the movie, he kind of, like, wins the hearts of everyone, like, especially that last scene when Woody found her in the suitcase and she kind of, like, giving up. She's like, well, I guess I'm going to Tokyo now. And then when she was, like, realized she was found, it's just like, that was a huge moment. So yeah, that was very well acting. And like you said before, the whole representation thing, I think she was also just, like, a cool character. Like, I remember for me liking her when I was younger and be like, oh no, yeah, she's cool. I mean, I didn't have her as like I had a Woody toy, but I didn't have her, but she was so cool.
I have her as well. I think every child, and for that matter, even an adult, makes a connection with one of the characters because it kind of exemplifies what they are, either as a child or what they want to be as as an adult, or as an adult, and it connects with their inner child. However you want to phrase it, there's a connection. And so she created a connection to a lot of young women and little girls at the time, and was a distinct character on her own that did quite a bit in the film. Don't ask me who I connect with.
You're Stinky Pete. Bullseye? Slinky?
Yeah.
Rex.
Okay, sure. No, you want to be Potato Head.
Well, that's the way I normally am, but in retrospect, the big ferocious dinosaur is the one that's neurotic. Yeah.
Also, when you do play video games, you do look a little bit like Rex. My hands can't reach both the controls at the same time.
Yeah, well.
All right, let's move to best scene. I have 5 nominees here. I have Yard Sale. I have Woody's Roundup, which is kind of the introduction to the whole gang. And when they first show him the video of the TV show and all of the other merchandise and such. Then we have Toy Store, which is when all of the other toys, Slinky, Rex, Ham, Potato Head, Buzz, go through the toy store itself. They go through the Barbie aisle, they go through the Buzz Lightyear aisle, etc. I have When She Loved Me, which is the 3-minute clip that we've already highlighted a couple of times. And then I have the airport as kind of the final ending sequence of the movie. Out of these, did I miss anything that you feel should be recognized?
I have McWhiggin's office, which is the whole reveal of what's going to happen and wanting to go in, to the museum and why and all of that. I think that's a huge portion of this. And I think it needs to be a separate scene.
Well, when you say his office, we've already had as an audience that entire plan and what's going on with it revealed prior to that moment. What we get there is the reveal to the rest of the gang, what is exactly happening.
Are you including the Toy Story or the toy store when they end up getting there and try to rescue Woody? And he says, no, don't, I want to go. Okay, so that in and of itself should be a separate scene then.
But that's not in the office. That's in his apartment.
Oh, yeah, it's across the street.
Okay, the apartment then. My mistake. Then it's his house.
Okay, so let's just refer to that then as Woody's...
No, isn't that in there? Because they come through the ductwork.
Yes, that's not at the toy store. That's at the apartment. They enter the apartment building.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, so we'll refer to it, though, because it's more specific than just being in the apartment where Woody's been basically the entire time, as Woody decides to stay.
Okay.
Because I wasn't sure what you were talking about there for a moment.
So when he was on the phone with the Tokyo, or was that in his office? When he's on the phone talking to... When did they reveal the plans for like Tokyo and that expansion?
That was something that Stinky Pete revealed earlier on, and what their destiny was. That was about the Woody's Roundup section of things, where they gave kind of the exposition of all of that. But then when Al is on the phone in his own apartment and he's talking about shipping, and then there are different phone conversations he has. Like he has one with the museum itself as to what kind of price they will give. And then he mentions that there's a Woody doll and he's taking those photos and sending them to him, which is kind of quaint because who does Polaroids anymore when you could just simply take it with your phone and send it through text or email or whatever various Snapchat thing that you have these days.
A guy who dresses in a chicken suit and goes on TV. That's who takes Polaroids.
Everything's a buck. Anyway. Anything else to add?
Crossing the road under those construction cones. That wasn't... I just liked how they played that out. I can't say it'll win over the other scenes, but just something I always just like... That's a memorable one for me.
Okay. All right, so then out of these, we have Yard Sale, Woody's Roundup, Toy Store, When She Loved Me, Crossing the Road, Woody Decides to Stay, and Airport. What is the best scene?
For me, it's Woody Decides to Stay, because I think it's the ultimate pinnacle of the movie. It's where everything kind of hits ahead.
You mean the climax?
I guess. I mean...
Because everything else is descending action from that point on.
Yeah. And it really has the most impact of what is the purpose of a toy? What is their purpose in general? What is their ultimate relationship with each other and with Andy?
I think what you're trying to say is that all the questions up to that point are ones that we've been only theorizing on, and that's when the rubber starts to meet the road.
Sure.
I could buy that. For me, it's no surprise, as I've mentioned it a couple of times. I have When She Loved Me. I loved that 3-minute sequence because I thought it was the emotional appeal of the life of the toy. Everything else was kind of theorizing or talking about it almost in a philosophical nature. This one kind of brought it home for me, what it was to be a toy that had been neglected. And the emotional punch of that moment for me solidified the quality of the film.
I already knew when rewatching the film at the very beginning, the yard sale scene, because that felt like a kid version of Mission Impossible. And also I feel like it kind of brought in something from at the end of the first movie when they're opening presents for Christmas and Woody and Buzz heard Andy finding out that he's getting a puppy and they're like, oh no, not a puppy. And so it's just like with that scene, it kind of showed that it was something that was going to be chaos and everything, but they actually bonded and everything too. And then the whole like, is Woody safe? Is he not safe? What's going to happen? There's a lot of like stakes were high in that scene. So how the yard sale is my best.
I love that they went against the grain because of how you said that the first one ended. You're thinking, oh, the dog's just going to chew up the toys. And then it's kind of like a plaything or a significant back and forth figure in Woody's kind of hierarchy of the Andy's room. And so it kind of plays along with all of this stuff. He's got it trained better than the humans do. I love the dynamic of that, of just kind of going against what you were expecting or subverting the expectations of the audience in that moment. As far as my favorite scene, I'll go with the same scene I went for best scene. When She Loved Me, I think is the best and my favorite moment of this. I don't think it's my most indelible, but it's definitely the thing that, having watched it again for the first time in like 20 years, that I certainly felt the most connection to.
For me, favorite scene is the airport. There's just so much that's funny and heroic and chance and, how are they going to get it? Just, there was a lot in that was enjoyable to me. And so it just struck a chord with me, I guess.
You liked seeing Stinky Pete end up with the Barbies.
Yeah. Can only imagine what he'll look like with tie-dye on his face.
This one was actually tough for me. It was between the airport and the elevator, actually, because there's just a lot going there. I just loved like the newer Buzz trying to figure out like what's going on and the delusion that was there when he was like, yes, I did it. He's like flying, but it's just the elevator rising. But the airport scene, I think it's just a lot more going on, and it also felt like it just once again introduced like a whole new world as well. So yeah, airport scene for me too.
Yeah, it certainly is an expansion on the world in a way that we haven't really seen, even though they have interactions with the larger world. An airport is just kind of a completely unknown beast, and they're so small in comparison to everything else that's going on, up until the point where they had that final moment where the plane passes overhead and all four of them like squish their heads together, which I loved. But yeah. Finally, most indelible moment. I have, oddly enough, Woody's Roundup, only for the simple fact that even though I hadn't seen the film for 20 years, I roughly remembered that Stinky Pete was the villain, but the most memorable characters are Bullseye and Jessie. And so you get all of them and their introduction to the story through this one scene, this moment, to kind of give how they're connected generally to Woody and the larger toy universe overall. So if you were to ask me anything about this movie, those would have been my highlights, and they kind of come all from that one scene.
The toy maker painting over Woody's shoe as he's repairing him and bringing up next that last moment. I still remember when I first saw it and just thinking like, oh no, not the shoe. It's like almost like it was over, and I contributed to him. You're like, well, yeah, I guess I'm going to Tokyo.
It's like taking off Michael Jackson's glove.
For me, I have the airport. It's what I remembered from before I started watching it again, and I understood afterwards why.
All right, that looks like a good spot for our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmode Podcast and find us the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 238 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Joe Don Baker, 89, American actor. Known for the movies Walking Tall Cape Fear, The Living Daylights, and Goldeneye. Les Dilley, 84, Welsh production designer, worked on Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Alien, The Empire Strikes Back, and The Abyss. 3-time Oscar nominee. Mara Corday, 95, American actress and showgirl, known for the movies Tarantula, Sudden Impact, Pink Cadillac, and The Rookie.
Yes, that Rookie. Thank you, Kieran.
Peter David, 68, American writer, known for his work on X Factor and creating Spider-Man 2099. Rick Derringer, 77, American musician, known for the songs Hang On Sloopy, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, and Real American.
And I do want to also mention another person that we lost today that I didn't have a chance to add to your notes before we started, but Ed Gale, who made his film debut wearing the Howard the Duck suit and went on to play Chucky in Child's Play, as well as 2 other films in that series, died at the age of 61 this week. So Joe Don Baker is somebody that a few people might remember, particularly if you're a James Bond fan. He was the American counterpart, kind of took on the Felix Leiter role in Goldeneye, and was the villain in The Living Daylights. Not a Bond film that a lot of people are familiar with or certainly appreciate. Mara Corday was apparently somebody that worked with Clint Eastwood on a lot of his later films and was apparently very close with him. They were likely very close in age because I think Clint's only a couple of years younger than 95. Les Dilley obviously worked a lot with George Lucas and Lucas's production company on a lot of these major films. Peter David is a celebrated comic book writer, both for DC and Marvel. And Rick Derringer, of course, is an influential musician. So even though the names may not be immediately apparent to everybody here in the audience, certainly we have quite a bit of loss this week. And so we commemorate these here fondly with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. Okay, let's go to best funniest lines. I'll just start with the one that I led the show off with. Woody, ride like the wind, Bullseye.
Jessie, you never forget kids like Emily or Andy, but they forget you.
Rex, it's the chicken man, Ham. I knew there's something I didn't like about that chicken.
Buzz Lightyear, you still worried? Woody, about Andy? Nah, it'll be fun while it lasts. Buzz Lightyear, I'm proud of you, cowboy. Woody, besides, when it all ends, I'll have old Buzz Lightyear to keep me company for infinity and beyond.
Buzz Lightyear, don't worry, Woody. In a few hours, you'll be sitting around a campfire with Andy making delicious schmoes. Woody, they're called s'mores, Buzz? Yes, of course.
Stinky Pete the Prospector. Let me see that. Oh, it's just a pop seam. Easy repaired. You consider yourself lucky. Woody. Lucky? Are you shrink wrapped? I'm missing my arm.
I love the reverse of the initial, because it was the biggest line of the original Toy Story, but Buzz Lightyear. Woody, you're not a collector's item. You're a child's plaything. You are a toy. Woody, for how much longer? One more rip and Andy's done with me. And what do I do then, Buzz? Huh? You tell me.
You saved our lives. We are eternally grateful. The little green men.
What the hell was that? You sounded like the creature from the Black Lagoon, not the aliens.
Okay. I tried.
It's really not hard. You just go extra nasally. You have saved our lives. We are eternally grateful.
Like the Dana version.
Of course. Can never get a break on my own damn show.
Buzz, I'm going to let go of the wall. No, he wouldn't. Yes, he will. To infinity and beyond.
Stinky Pete the Prospector. Look, we have an eternity to spend at the museum together. Let's not start by pulling fingers, shall we? Woody, you really are Stinky Pete, aren't you?
I'm out.
I couldn't find the full line, but basically it went something like, ooh, a puppy. Bark, 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 bark. I think it was Slinky. It just started making that bark sound.
Woody, You're right, Prospector. I can't stop Andy from growing up, but I wouldn't miss it for the world. Ham. All right, nobody look till I get my cork back in. Ham also. You heard of Kung Fu? Well, get ready for pork chop. And finally, Woody. Here's your list of things to do while I'm gone. Batteries need to be changed. Toys at the bottom of the chests need to be rotated. Oh, and make sure everyone attends Mr. Spell's seminar on what to do if you or a part of you is swallowed. Ah, yes, the ever-present life cycle of a toy.
Yes.
All right. Let's move to the Stanley rubric then. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out till today. So this would be 2004 to today. What is the legacy of the film as shared between the industry and the audience at large? We give 5 and 5 points for each of those two groups for a total of 10 points overall. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first. For the industry, I think that it set a trend of Pixar films. They had a long run. I looked at the list. I mean, Cars and Up, and Up in the Air, Up.
Okay, so first off, since you're having trouble here, it is this movie, then it is Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, Cars, Up, and Wall-E in succession.
Yep. So for the industry, I'm giving it a 5.
Excuse me, I also forgot The Incredibles in there.
The public has kind of, yes, it holds, and a lot of people have seen them, but it's kind of dwindled. It's not like everybody has seen it that's outside of the target audience at the time of its release. So for the public, I'm going with a 4. So I'm at a 9 overall.
I'm going to make mine fairly simple. I don't think on an industry standard that this is raising the bar necessarily. It is the beginning to some of a long line of very successful, very good, high-quality Pixar films. It is also the last non-Disney endorsed Pixar film. Even though they're offered by Disney now and they're overall part of the library, this was not a part of it because the first film, while it was distributed by Disney, was still produced by Pixar itself before they became part of a larger entity of Disney in the overall takeover, which I want to say happened around the time that either The Incredibles was happening or Ratatouille, somewhere in that range, like 2004 to 2007 or something to that effect.
It's when Steve Jobs left Pixar to go back to Apple.
The final sale didn't happen until much later after that. We discussed it during the Incredibles episode when Walt was on last time. It happened more in the mid-2000s, but I'm sure it started to happen because if I remember right, this is about the time that this movie came out. Jobs was going back to Apple and was starting on the iPod, which was his next big thing. But anyway, neither here nor there. We can discuss that on the next Steve Jobs movie that we cover. Regardless, I still think that the industry has reverence for this movie, but I think almost universally, Toy Story 3 is thought to be the most superior. Toy Story 1 is thought to be the most novel. This one kind of gets lost in the shuffle in between, even though it's a very high-quality movie that I think a lot of people recognize. It's just not the one that most people think of when they think of the Toy Story arc and impact in the way that they do the other two films. And so because of that, I think this has like a 4 to me, even though it introduces newer characters and some that have lasted over the next several movies. I just can't quite get to much higher than that.
Let me give you one argument for higher. And that is this set the formula of what you need in an animated film for a sequel, to make the sequel advance and become more than just grabbing the cash from people who saw the previous one.
Okay, sure, except that for Pixar, I would say there's only one other sequel that I think is to this level of quality, and certainly when they got to like Cars 2 and Cars 3, most people didn't think those quite fit the bill. The Incredibles 2 is fine. It's just not nearly up to the same standard of the first one. Monsters University is okay, but it's not the same as the original one. Even Finding Dory to most people is kind of a lesser version of Finding Nemo. Toy Story is the only one where the sequels have really successfully worked. And I would say the only other one where that seemingly has borne out is Inside Out 2. So if you're taking it on an argument that this is Pixar's formula for sequels, while they've done some fairly successful ones, like The Incredibles and Finding Dory and some of these other ones have been successful, maybe not to the level that Inside Out 2 was last year as the number one grossing film of last year, but it's still not to the level of quality that this is. And even Toy Story 3 is a very highly successful film on a quality and a storytelling basis in a way that most of the other sequels has not quite been able to expand on the universe. Instead, usually where Pixar was best was actually in original content. We mentioned most of the run of these movies. You're talking franchise starters in Wall-E and Up and Ratatouille and Finding Nemo and Monsters, Inc. and The Incredibles. That's like 6 different original films comparative to anything that's in a sequelized format. So again, I think that this movie probably doesn't get as much credit as it probably should on a quality level within the industry. So I only have it at a 4. Audience-wise, again, I think that this gets lost a little bit in the shuffle, not enough to knock it down significantly, but I have that at a 4.5. Even though Woody and Buzz and Toy Story at the time were very big, this was the 3rd highest grossing film of its particular year. It's just not worthy of a 5 in the same breath as other things that are bigger franchises. So I don't think it's necessarily a knock to say that Toy Story is on that next rung at a 4.5 for an audience. So I have an 8.5 overall.
I have a 4 for industry as well, but I actually gave it a 3.5 for the audience. And it's literally just because I think the other two, Toy Story 3 and 4, kind of knocked it down. And I think it really does get lost in the sauce. Like I honestly can't say that this one was better than any of the others. I do remember it, but I think that's just more so from a nostalgic thing. But that third one, I remember going to it and like as like a grown adult, and it just I think it was like a stronger movie for me emotionally and the storyline too, and just seeing it as an adult as well. Anytime you see it like a kid's movie as an adult and it still kind of hits as saying something. And I'm also just going to advocate for Incredibles 2. I think that was an incredible sequel. I actually rewatched it recently. We were watching our nieces, and I think it stands strong as a sequel.
All right, so that gives us an 8.33 average between the three of us. Impact and significance. This is a measure of the impact and significance of the film within the first 5 years that it came out, as shared between the audience and the industry. Again, 5 and 5 points each for a total of 10. I'll try and make this, again, short and sweet. For the most part, I don't think that the legacy of this film is all that different than it was in the impact in the moment. I think that because of some of the other things that were going on in 1999, The Matrix, The Sixth Sense, a new Star Wars film, that while Toy Story 2 was big for a certain demographic and group, it was not the only thing that was going on that year. And it's reflected a little bit in the Oscars attention and some of the other films that were doing well. It was a very stacked year. And so I have that at a 4.5 on an audience level. On an industry level, critics were effusive in their praise. I certainly can't beat around that. The money that this made basically cemented Pixar's deal with Disney going forward, even though they wanted original property so that they could maximize the commercialism for the toy industry coming out of it, because they needed original properties to take control of. They did not have the ownership at the time until they bought Pixar as a whole of Toy Story, and that's why there's a gap between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 for Disney wasn't going to happen until they could buy all of Pixar and get rights over Woody and Buzz and all the other toys that they could then sell or commercialize beyond that. So because of that, I'm going to give this a 4.5 for the industry as well. I have this at a 9.
I have a 4.5 for the public. And I will mirror your 4.5 for the industry for the same reasons, and I'll go with a 9.
All right.
I have a 9 as well, but I did a 5 industry, 4 public audience.
All right, so that makes the math very easy. It's a 9 average between the three of us. And let's move to novelty then. This is a measure of the originality of anything having to do with the movie, and then the execution on the movie as a whole. How well did they execute the plan or the originality, the idea of the movie? Walt, do you think you might be able to lead this one?
Sure. I think just the fact that this movie almost was not made because they lost the footage, and they still able to save it, but still having to piece all of that together. And this was not original just because it was, a sequel, of course, but I still think they kind of brought new life to it and everything. I actually have a high score for this one as a 9. I think they just did an exceptional job, but literally just because it's a sequel, otherwise it would be 10.
I'm having a hard time on one side of the equation. On an originality standpoint, I do give it credit much in the same way that I gave The Empire Strikes Back credit for expanding the universe. I think the technology and what they were doing with computer animation, because I mentioned it earlier, was such a leap forward that being as good looking as it is now, where I can't notice it as much as some of the other Pixar movies around the same range, I think is significant as far as both the originality and somewhat to the execution. I do think the storytelling is exquisite and also gives this kind of a leg up. It is not the most original thing, however, that I have ever seen. And that does knock it down a little, but not a ton. I think that realistically, I could give this a 4 and a 4 on both for an 8 total.
Okay. The execution to me, the animation and the quality of the development of the visuals was significant. And so I'm giving that a 4.5. It is a sequel. It did advance, but it did not reinvent anything. So the originality, I have to give it a lesser points. So I'm at a 3 for originality. So I'm at a 7.5 overall, simply because it made strides, but it wasn't like it broke a ton of new ground. Added Jessie and added at least a character that women and girls, little girls, could relate to. And that's why I'm giving it a higher thing than what it is. So 3 for that, 7.5.
All right, so that is an 8.17 average between the three of us because Dad had to go for that extra half point. We move to classicness. Classicness is a basic measure of how well the film has aged or not. And I don't really know if there's any other better way to define it. It's kind of an amorphous category that has had a lot of different things laid on top of it as the bedrock. Instead of a 5 being the median point on this category, we've often started, it used to be at a 7, now it's at a 6. If I were to go first on this, I really don't see any negative points. I don't see anything to really take off for that has aged poorly. On the original Toy Story, we kind of gave a couple of points up because the animation looked a little dated. And for as novel as it was, that was maybe something where it suffered for us. I don't really see that from this one. So I can't take anything off. So at minimum, I would say 6 is probably warranted as the true baseline of where we're at. But as I've also mentioned previously, once a movie gets to about 25 years, and this is now 26 years old or about to be 26, it gets maybe an extra bump for some level of timelessness. And I think this is a movie that could be enjoyed by children, by adults, by younger adults, by older adults. I don't think this is something that's ill classic. And so I give it an extra point for timelessness. And also because of the diversity of the cast and the characters and the different people that are represented in here, for giving itself a stronger female character to wrap around, for also being ahead of its time just on an animation front. and just being a good quality movie, I'm going to add an extra point. I'm going to go with an 8.
I mirror again most of your comments, and I will say why I could not go higher than 8. Yes, they added a female character, but this is still a very, very lily white movie.
Rex is green.
Okay.
They have a pink character in Ham.
Yeah, okay. Again, it's just that's the biggest problem I have with it as far as going any higher. And it's not a huge thing because it's toys, right? But the fact is that there is not a lot of diversity. And they tried to start addressing that with the introduction of Jessie, but it didn't go far enough as far as I'm concerned. So I'm at an 8.
All right, we have 2 8s on the board, Walt.
I'm actually at 8 as well. I think that this movie will last another 10 years. Like, I think when it's like the 35th or even down to the 50th, I don't think this movie will ever be out of style or ever be cringy or anything. Honestly, I think it's just like because like within the whole Toy Story universe, it's very good, but I wouldn't put it as like higher than the other ones in the series. I think the first one was, I would consider, innovative, and then the following 2, I think they really stretched the story even further. But this one was a solid sequel. I think it stands out on its own, but not ahead of the other ones in the universe.
That is a 8 average between the 3 of us. Finally, we move to rewatchability. There have been many tests suggested for rewatchability. We, at one time, were using almost exclusively the Kieran B test. We have since allowed many different people to create their own tests. But usually we let the guest lead on this category. So, Walt, rewatchability to you.
I'd put it at a 10. Like, I know the others, I was like, it was good, but not as good as the others. But this is a very easy watch. All right, my nieces were over. One is 6, one is about to be 1, and they're both very tuned into it. And I know this like for one of them was her first time, but the other one, I don't know how many times she's seen it, but very easy for me to watch. I feel like I could probably watch it again next week or something like that. So I'll give it a 10.
Well, for me, I think I may have seen this one time since its original release when we saw it in theaters. I have no aversion to watching it again. I doubt highly if I'll put it on again. You know, if it's somebody who's interested in Toy Story or I have grandchildren, yeah, you know, that's one thing. So I'm going to give it a little bit higher marks than just general. I have no aversion to watching it again. It's been 25 years. I've seen it one other time since its release, other than for preparation of the show. I probably, unless there's some reason for, you know, little people involved, may never watch it again in my lifetime. So I'm at a 5.
All right. And then I've been taking a more hardline, objective, let's say, stance on rewatchability, whereas it's not just how I think the film is as far as rewatchability, but more on a broad swath of how rewatchable the movie is to a general category of an audience. This is a very short movie. I think for the most part, it's about 82 minutes before the credits when the outtakes start. It's sweet. It doesn't really have any slow moments or any drop-off points. It could be viewed many times by kids repeatedly without really too many issues. I have this at a 9. So that makes it a 8 average between the 3 of us. Okay. So then for audience score, we had a 92% for Google users and an 89% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us an 8.8. So to recap the categories, for Legacy, we had an 8.33. For Impact and Significance, we had a 9. For Novelty, we had an 8.17. For Classicness, we had an 8. For Rewatchability, we had an 8. And audience score had an 8.8, giving us a final total of 50.3, and currently placing it on our list between Scream and The Big Lebowski for number 59. Now, in relation, Currently, the original Toy Story is listed at number 17. So this would be about 40 spots below that. Certainly not expecting Scream and The Big Lebowski to be in the same company as Toy Story 2, but that's how the show works.
Yep.
All right, let's move to remaining questions on this one. How do the airport cars get back to the airport?
Well, if you remember, the neighbors were standing out there looking at them sitting there. So my guess is they called the cops.
Okay, and how do the cops transport them back? Because those things are not going to be fast enough to go through regular traffic. I know the toys got them through there, but I don't know quite how without having a severe accident. So does some machine or something pick them up?
They put them on wrecker or on flatbeds and haul them back.
Okay. It's quite expensive stealing by the toys who don't like to be stolen themselves, but okay.
Well, if you can figure out that they're responsible, then they could be held liable. But, the law school students should know that.
Okay. I'll ask my professor if toys can be held liable for theft of airport cars in Toy Story 2 as our next mock exercise. And then I will be promptly expelled. Although I suppose it's not the most absurd law school question I've heard this week. Anyway,
there's going to be about 5% of your class that's going to come up with even more bizarre or obscure ones. And those are the ones that are either going to end up being a judge or disbarred.
Okay. I do want to ask the question at some point, though. I think of the opening scene of Magnolia that apparently has been used as a law school question. The guy who jumps from the roof and is shot by his mother by mistake.
Yes.
Yeah. That's an interesting one, certainly.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Does Al sue the airline for losing his bags or his toys?
He should.
The bags are unharmed, but the toys have gone missing, and there's no chain of custody that can establish where they went.
No, there is a chain of custody. When you give your bags up to a entity and they're responsible for transport, they are responsible for ensuring that the bags or the things remain intact. Whether the toys themselves open the bags and escape, again, they're responsible. That's the standard of law.
And I think that, we saw him doing that commercial again at the end, and he was not happy. So I don't think he either didn't have good lawyers or he didn't think that he could win it. So,
or that's just more easily relatable to kids, that the guy that has been the semi-villain most of the entire movie that stole Woody and then might be selling him into essentially display, doesn't get what he wants and is not made whole, even though that's not how real life works. Yeah, try explaining law school to children.
Can you imagine the kid's reaction if he's going, well, I didn't get the toys sold, but I sure got a bunch of money out of the airline for malfeasance.
Yeah, that'll go over well.
I can just imagine the kids turning to mom or dad and going, what's malfeasance? Ask your grandfather.
And my last question, which toy is your favorite character?
I'll go ahead. Rex.
I've always been a Woody guy, but then again, I'm usually investing in the protagonist. If I can't, that's usually a problem for me.
I love Wally Shaw. I mean, his voice is just so annoying and degrading that, and then on top of it, the character is a ferocious dinosaur who's a neurotic. It's just, the irony of it is just so great. That's my love of life, is the sense of irony in so many things.
And maybe eventually you'll get Wallace Shawn's name right.
He goes by Wally.
Yeah, but you keep saying Shaw, not Sean.
Okay. Again, Tom.
I think Woody, I had a Woody doll, and actually, yeah, I'll go with Woody because actually I lost a Woody doll one day. I was with my dad, and I don't know why I didn't say anything, but I had the Woody doll and I was hanging outside the window. I think we went over something, and I dropped it, and I just saw it bounce away on the side of the highway, and I just kind of put my hand in the car and I was just oh, that was it. So yeah, Woody always have just a special place in my heart, but I will say a special shout out to the mom. Actually, I just thought about this because she actually was like trying to save the Woody doll for her kid, and she was like, I mean, shoot, we could have get rid of this. It's broken. But she's like, now we're saving it. It's his special toy. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, as a parent, you certainly don't want to make your child cry. And if he comes home to not find his favorite toy, it's not like some parents who wait until their child is sick and then offer them the choice between two toys, even though they don't know that it's a choice between two toys. One is clearly the superior to the other, and you wait to have them accept the first toy so that they feel like, oh, somebody was thinking of me and got me something special while I was sick. And come to find out it was just a tactic so that they could win at Fisher-Price Castle all along. Not harboring any resentment or anything.
You harbor a lot of resentment.
What? Any other remaining questions for anyone else?
Yeah, well, I always play into your own proclivities.
Sure you do. All right, hearing no other remaining questions, we want to thank Walt for being back for his 5th episode. As we mentioned before, we will be sending him his hat. So he will be now a member of the Five Timers Club, get a special badge on the website and all that jazz that comes with it. But just a reminder, before you are back again 2 more times this season, Walt, you're going to be back with us twice in July, once with the usual suspects at the end of July. But before that, you will be back to discuss one of my 3 personal favorite films in Inception. But again, remind everybody what you're working on and where they can find you.
yes, I was going to try to do a play on Inception words, but I lost it. But yeah, the Working While Black show, the podcast I started because I felt like there was a lot of career advice that I was missing that kind of spoke to the Black experience. So I created the show to fill that gap, but then also build in a way so it's going to eat for everyone. Very resource driven, and it's a challenging time right now for a lot of people who are in the workforce and just trying to figure out what to do. So I'm trying to build something that could help too, whether it's like guidance or just at least let you know you're not alone. But the Working While Black show out on all the podcast places, YouTube, and sharing clips throughout Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all those places.
All right.
Working on that shirt, that T-shirt for the next.
Yes, 10 guest appearances get you the T-shirt, which our mutual friend Rob Conlon just got a couple of weeks ago for his appearance on Gladiator.
It's a nice shirt.
It is a very nice shirt. I think actually you wouldn't think it because the hats are usually a bigger deal than the T-shirt, but I think the T-shirts are actually nicer than the hats, just personally.
I do too. That's why they're 10 as opposed to 5.
Fair enough.
Earn it.
So you'll have another couple appearances, get up to 7 by the end of the year. And you just need 3 more times, but you'll have opportunities because we have not yet circulated next year's schedule, at least among the 5-time club members.
Yes.
I'm going to try to go for a record. What's a record for like a within 1 year guest appearance?
Within 1 year? Oh boy. I know Peterson got to 5, I think, last year. That might be the record.
Okay. I'm going to tie him.
I think,
Go for
except that I think this year alone, he's already been on 2, and I think he signed up for another like 4 or 5.
Oh, okay, never mind. You know, at one point I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna outdo Rob," and for a second I was like, "Okay, maybe I could get that record most in a year." But you said Al Peterson.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Al.
All right. Well, thank you again for being on with us. We look forward to having you back in a few weeks. But remaining thoughts, Dad, for the week.
I have been working on watching as many films from 1982 for our guest appearance on our friend Andrew's Revisionist Almanac show.
Are you Andrew's friend? Do you consider?
Well, I consider him a friend. I mean,
okay.
He seems to like to bait me a lot, but
I know a lot of my friends love to bait you into stuff.
Yeah, but then again, that's common. That's kind of the way things happen in general. It's my life as a lawyer. I'm used to people baiting me, and I don't care. So fine. And it's kind of bringing back memories of being in high school because 1982 was my senior year. And so I spent a lot of time in the theaters. It was basketball games, football games, going out for pizza, and going to the movies. That was my Friday and Saturday nights, and brings back a lot of my youth. Other than that, I'm trying to think. We have our guest appearance that we'll be doing for another show.
Yes, Movies and Us will be having us on to do Jaws, that I think releases about the same point as this episode. So it might be the same week. I'm not completely sure. But we will be doing the 50th anniversary episode for them for Jaws before we get to our own celebration of Jaws coming up in a few weeks.
But other than that, I'm just trying to get through and starting to enjoy the nicer weather and looking forward to the summer.
As for me, I'll mention a couple of things very briefly. Number one, this is my first opportunity since it happened, since last week was a pre-recorded episode, to do this for all of our greater international and particularly European listeners. Glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur. Yes, I don't have my flag behind me because I'm in our office studio this week, and I certainly forgot my ball cap to bring with me today, but finally, after a 17-year drought and 41 years from a major European trophy, Tottenham has finally secured glory again. So that's just a personal thing for me. Number two, I would also like to mention that the Cannes Film Festival just ended, and the number one film is a film by an Iranian director, or I believe Iranian produced and whatever else. And since last year's Cannes Film Festival winner went on to win Best Picture, I'm just reveling in the possibilities of an Iranian film winning Best Picture and what the Donald will do. At this point, the next 3.5 years of this show and my life is just going to be attempting to spark trolling of this guy, because I just can't stand it. He wants to own the libs, but he certainly can't take any criticism or any jokes or any barbs at his expense. He is a very thin-skinned person. And finally, as far as it goes, I just want to briefly mention that I've been also catching up on some various different shows and movies and things that I basically missed during the semester of law school. And even though I'm starting summer classes, they're not hopefully as involved as they were during the regular semester. Both my dad and I and my grandma and my mom last weekend were able to catch up on a show that I know we're a little bit behind on, but I certainly would recommend to the general audience. So much as you can stomach something of this level of gravity and seriousness as Adolescence on Netflix, but certainly a series that if you have 4 hours to catch, both from a quality of a filmmaking standpoint, because even though it's a small mini series, it's made very much in a cinematic quality, and each part adds a different layer of depth and point of view to a certain circumstance as it's going on. I'm not really sure the original conception of how everything came together and what exactly all of it was supposed to entail. I know there's been discussion that it was supposedly based on something that was in real life events, but I guess the creators have since said that it is not based on any real life events and have distanced themselves from that. But even so, the quality of the series is something that should be, I don't know, it's not enjoyed. The series is not something I think is meant to be enjoyed so much as somewhat endured, but certainly a piece of art that I think is well worth people's time if they're willing to invest in something of that level of seriousness.
The term is provocative. It's supposed to instill in you some emotional understanding of what is going on from most aspects of a senseless, violent crime. Let's just say that being now approximately 18 years removed from criminal defense work, I could watch it. I don't know if I could have watched it and enjoyed it a decade ago.
And that's fair. I think that it does give some insight into the British legal system, but I think there's enough in there that is relatable to most modern democratic law systems that you can at least appreciate, even though they don't have all of the same traditions, that they have most of the same shared values of a society ruled by law that allows you to have some level of connectivity to what's going on, not only with the circumstances, but the characters involved. And that's, to me, the most important part of the series. So all of those things is just some small housekeeping. But again, thank you to everybody out there for getting through another week with us. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening. Don't tell me how to run your life. I've been doing pretty good with it. Next week, for our 265th episode, we welcome back occasional writer, contributor, and film commentator Scott Cole to discuss our second Robert Altman film of Season 6, With Nashville from 1975. Directed by Robert Altman, written by Joan Tewksbury, cinematography by Paul Lohman, music by Richard Baskin, and starring Keith Carradine, Ned Beatty, Shelley Duvall, Lily Tomlin, and Scott Glenn. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok, or Blue Sky at the handle @GModePodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.